Right on schedule. We're going to introduce our next speaker. Monica Drake is the operations manager at Heritage Village. Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Brian. Is the operations manager at Heritage Village. If you haven't been to Heritage Village, shame on you. It's our county historical center in terms of museum and archives, and a variety of the buildings that have been moved there from other places of the county. Provide a great cross-section of the county's history. Monica's here to speak about soon to be the 50th anniversary, believe it or not, of Heritage Village. And on your program, you see also we'll be celebrating another event nationally in 2026. So without stealing Monica's thunder any further, here's Monica Drake.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you for having me here today. I'm always happy to speak about Heritage Village. As Tom mentioned, my name is Monica Drake. I'm the operations manager at Heritage Village. And as Tom mentioned, in the next 2 years, well, less than 2 years actually, Heritage Village will be celebrating a magnificent milestone, 50 years, and that's something that the county should really be proud of. There are interesting things that happen even before you're born in this world that then affect your life later on. And Heritage Village is one of those things that was actually developed, organized, and catapulted in 1976. But so before I was even wandering this mortal coil. And the reason in 1976 that Heritage Village really was something that people in the area were interested in organizing was because of a national movement, really, in 1976 during America's 200th anniversary. So it was it was a time where people were talking about local culture, local heritage, local preservation, and certainly there were larger institutions that were collecting art history, natural history, but there were not a lot of places that were organized or established at that time to really collect, preserve, and exhibit a region's or a locality's local patrimony or local cultural heritage. So this full national movement was called Bicentennial Fever, and I love that. I gravitate towards that saying. It catches you right away, and it really is a great example of what I think people were experiencing at that time. Thinking about how do I protect and cherish and be good stewards of things for people in the future, so that they can have an understanding of what America is all about, or what this locality is all about. So that is really the catalyst for Heritage Village. 5 years before I was born, and then, of course, later on became the director of the organization. So maybe, who knows, in 2031, someone will be born, and then several years later, they'll be managing Heritage Village. So you just never know. Life is very strange that way. But I put this quote from Don Jones, because I think it says a lot about what that bicentennial fever really encompassed for people back in 1976, and why it was so important to develop Heritage Village and other local historic organizations that collect, preserve, and exhibit your local history. So he said, we are honoring those people in the past who are good enough to work for the future. And that's really what it's all about, is understanding where you come from to really make a difference where you are. So jump up, several decades, and here we are in 2024, and we're counting down, like I said, the days to our 50th anniversary. And today we are doing so many things that I think would really inspire and make proud those people who started Heritage Village back in 1976. We are not moving away from their original philosophy. We are recommitting ourselves to that preservation philosophy. We are advocating for Heritage Village like never before, because it needs it like never before. Like a lot of different smaller historical organizations, preservation organizations need it more than ever before. So we see funding go away, we see interest go away. And I know I'm not alone in saying that after COVID, a lot of volunteers seem to have disappeared. And I know that in talking with other managers and people working in cultural organizations, that's not a unique position to be in. So this is a really pivotal time for us. And it's nice to know that we're not alone, right? We've got each other. I see 60 lovely faces in this room who share the same goals that I do, so there's still hope. And I just want to talk about, real quickly, some of the things that Heritage Village is doing right now that will take us into our 50th anniversary, and I think will allow us to really continue on for the next 50, for those that we're going to be preserving these things and being good stewards of these things for the next 50 years. So the first thing is we're working very closely. We've worked really closely in the past, actually, with Ranker Eichen Parks, which is a local, a wonderful local architectural firm to work to do condition assessments for each of the houses at Heritage Village. And we started with our 3 main houses that we identified really need the work. So you can see right here, and the thread will continue through each thing that I pop up, is the jewel on property, which is our House of Seven Gables, originally located in Clearwater. We wanted to start with that one because clearly it's the showstopper Victorian house with all these beautiful architectural flourishes present. So I think this is the greatest example I could give you of how special Heritage Village is. But we are really proud and committed to working with subject matter experts to help us understand better the envelope of the house, those architectural flourishes, how some of the infrastructure of the house operates and works, and how it really needs to dovetail almost seamlessly with the collections pieces inside, and how it works when people are visiting. So there's so many things to consider when you're going into a preservation project. And I should say right on top of it, we're not just working with subject matter experts contractually, but here at Heritage Village and being a part of the county, we're super lucky to be able to work with subject matter experts within our own organization. So I work with Tom really closely. I work with Greg Milam sitting in the back really closely to get some of these projects done. And I think everybody in here understands that you don't do a preservation project alone. It's just too hard, and there's a lot of moving parts. So to that end, we've been working with, again, Ranker. We kind of moved away from them because our county JOC process, which is a complicated thing I won't even get into, required that we move to a different organization on a contract. But I love to show you this because these are the as-builts they've done of the House of Seven Gables. So just really meticulous drawings of our houses so that we better understand the buildings that we're trying to preserve. And when I started at Heritage Village, the majority of the buildings had like the hand-drawn floor plan, and which was lovely to have anything at all. But this is certainly just a much better, cleaner document to work with. And of course, these types of elevations that you get with as-built are always so fun to look at. It's just like a little model being built. And to that point, with some of these drawings, we can build little models. And if you go back to my table, you'll see the 3D printed model of Boyer Cottage that we did from some of these elevations and the floor plans that we're getting through AutoCAD. So if you're good with AutoCAD and you've got some of these really highly detailed documents, you can print a tiny little 3D structure of your building, and I recommend it because they're fun to play with. So now we're working with a company called Atkins Relis. I think that's how they say it. But we are working with them to go forward because now we have condition assessments for 3 different buildings, one being the House of Seven Gables. And we are going to be now working towards the construction drawings for those buildings so that we can move forward with a company to actually work on the preservation work that needs to be done on those homes. And as we're going through, we're kind of going through almost like an assembly line. So the company will do another 3 condition assessments. Then they'll do another 3 construction drawings. Then we'll get the construction company on site to do the work. So again, thankfully, I don't have to do this alone. I have a lot of really great subject matter experts helping me and working on this with me. And not to mention the wonderful program that is the Penny for Pinellas, because these projects are incredibly expensive. If you go by the Secretary of the Interior's standards, I don't know if they get a kickback or something, but like everything you have to do to meet those standards is really expensive. And we're trying to do it right. That's again one of the goals of our recommitment to those preservation philosophies that our founders had for Heritage Village. So yes, we're slowly but surely making sure that as we get into our 50th anniversary and for the next 50, these buildings will be around for the next 50 because they've already been around for the last 100. So we really feel very strongly, and by me, I mean all those subject matter experts I'm working with, my colleagues, and certainly the staff at Heritage Village. Another huge thing for us is certainly access. So we do have a DEI philosophy at Heritage Village, and we understand that not everybody can always, be on site or get on site, or sometimes you just want to hang out in your pajamas in your living room and still explore a wonderful museum. I know during COVID there was a lot of that going on. Just about every museum I could think of when COVID hit in 2020 had some sort of virtual tour that popped up out of nowhere. And of course, everyone loved it and it was great to explore. So Heritage Village did not want to be left out of that. So at that point, we developed our Heritage Village app with a company called Story, which is spelled STQRY. They do a lot of different parks and museums. You can download the app or you can access it straight from our website as a URL, so you don't even have to download anything. And it takes you straight to Heritage Village, the Heritage Village map. You can see each of these little pinpoints on here represent a different building on site. It becomes really obvious, kind of going back to my original conversation about preservation and just that one example of the House of Seven Gables, that we've got 28 houses that we're doing this with, not just the House of Seven Gables, but as you can see here, the last house on the map is 28. So we really have our work cut out for us in trying to, maintain the houses in perpetuity. But certainly getting back to this point, you can come onto the site, you can use the audio, there's a full audio tour. So again, that goes back to our accessibility promise to the public that if you have any kind of mobility issue or maybe a visual or hearing issue, there are different ways of accessing the history of Pinellas County, and that is super important to us. I don't know if this is going to play, but
imagine the view from this classic and impressive Lake Queen and style home when it rested in its original location. Situated on the bluff in downtown Clearwater near the Pinellas County Court with wings and gables facing in multiple directions, an impressive wraparound porch, and gingerbread details. The elegant residence contains 13 rooms.
So this is actually the model being built virtually, the virtual model of the House of Seven Gables. And if you have a really amazing Wi-Fi link, it will do it pretty fast. So I like to play the audio tour from the app actually while I'm loading the virtual tour, which we also have for people to use. And this was made possible by a wonderful grant from the Florida Department of State Historic Resources. We were able to work with the USF Library to create LiDAR scans of all of the buildings, as well as the park, and then also do some really great footage from drones over the park. So again, going back to that kind of accessibility standard that we are really encouraged to provide the wonderful history of Heritage Village and the wonderful location of Heritage Village to everybody, even if they can't make it out to the park. And so one of the things we really want to do going forward is present this tour as like, you'll see we have the Oculus goggles over here, so you can take the tour of the park in VR mode. But one of the programs I'd like to get going is just a pilot program where we have a couple of Oculus goggles in maybe a local middle school library, and kids can check it out, and you can do the tour right from your library. Because we have also found after COVID, it's hard to get some of the public schools on site too. That really dropped off. So we're still seeing a lot of homeschool groups and private schools coming, but it seems that post-COVID, it's becoming more and more difficult for those public school teachers to get their students out of the classroom and actually, experiencing this really valuable asset in Pinellas County, which is kind of tragic because I have people who come back to Heritage Village now with their kids, and they're wandering around with their kids, and they'll stop me and they go, "Oh my God, this place is so cool. I remember when I came here in 4th grade." And now they're back. So anyone can, again, just start the tour, and it's really wonderful. You can go directly in.
Heritage Village.
Again, it has an audio file.
To discover the history of Pinellas County. Explore a collection of historic buildings with exhibits about coastal living, agriculture, community life, and tourism to learn how major industries and communities shape the diverse history.
And you can go right into the house
Explore the grounds of Heritage
and look
Village
around
using your mouse
at
or
everything,
touch
basically.
throughout the tour. The map shows your location.
And then every so often, it's pretty great because if you go into any of the houses within the virtual tour, you'll see these little boxes. And the USF group that did this for us, they're pretty amazing because they actually went in and scanned some of our more interesting pieces as well. So you can go into the house, you can look around the house. It will pop up interpretive panels for you so you can learn more about the house. But you can also click on some of these 3D models that are interactive. So you can spin it around and you can see like what's on the back and what's on the top, and you can look for maker's marks and things like that, which is pretty fun. And again, I grew up in a time where like you actually had things that were tactile and like you played with and stuff like that. But I'm pretty convinced that any kid today would like love this because they're all, virtually intelligent and literate, right? So they love playing with things like this. So it's really exciting for me to be able to offer this because I think just by the virtue of the interface itself, it might lend itself a little bit more to the younger generation and get them a little bit more familiar with some of these things. Again, accessibility, right? It's like location, location, location. But one of the things we've just done recently in the past 2 years is flip our collections management system public facing. So in the past, you used to have to make a research appointment with our archivist to get access to any of the Heritage Village archives, the library, or any of the collections pieces. But today, we've digitized a good portion of our archives. So thousands of maps, thousands of photographs, thousands of different special collections pieces that talk about local families, local businesses, are now right at your fingertips. And again, when you're done doing the tour in your pajamas, you can search our collection in your pajamas if you want to. So here I have an example of what would come up if you go to our website and you go to our exhibit, or rather our collections link, you'll be able to get into the public-facing side of our collection, and it works almost like a library catalog. So if you know how a library catalog works, you're going to be able to use this. It's very user-friendly. In the search, I just randomly put in Seven Gables, and up popped a picture of Seven Gables. Now here you can see that's a very small picture, and you're like, well, what am I supposed to do with that? We do only provide these in small TIFF format, but once you have this number right here, you can reach out to any of the staff members at Heritage Village and say, I would like to have a larger image of P767, and we can pull up the larger digital image for you and then provide that for you. So as you can see, that would pop up to look like something you can actually see. And again, this is a great piece of photographic information, right? Great primary source. This is a picture of the people after the House of Seven Gables was moved to Heritage Village in 1976, or rather 1978. It was a little bit after Heritage Village was founded. So if you're doing research on an historic house in the area, if you're doing research on a family in the area, if you're doing research on pretty much anything that has to do with Pinellas County history, let us know, because we can really help. And connecting, right? We want to further connect people to Pinellas County history, and we really want to tell our preservation story. So you can see right here, one of the main themes of our newest enterprise happening at Heritage Village, hopefully it will be open before our 50th anniversary, will be the redevelopment and fabrication and installation of our new permanent exhibit in our Roy Helms Gallery. And one of the first things I noticed when coming to Heritage Village and exploring how people interacted with the space was that there wasn't really anything on site that told them what this place was. So I've had people so many times in the past walk up to me and say, so when was this village incorporated? When did this become a village? Or when did people, who founded Heritage Village? Like as if it was as if it was Ozonia, right? And so, as people were asking me that, I'm like, yeah, there really isn't anything here that tells them what this place is. So luckily, and through the help of our friends group, the Pinellas County Historical Society, we were able to reach out and hire a curator, a wonderful woman by the name of Professor Kelly Onright at Flagler College, to work with us in researching and curating and understanding what this should look like for visitors coming on site so that they can orient themselves to the story, the preservation story, again, that preservation story going back to 1976, and all the good work that was the foundation that was laid back then for the future. And so Kelly will be with us through November, and then we're currently writing a grant to, again, out to the Florida Department of State Historical Resources to fund that exhibit, again, hopefully before we have our 50th anniversary. But this particular exhibit is really about interacting with people and telling them that preservation story and having them understand and really interface with public history. So that type of applied history or history from the ground up. Who were the local people? What were they doing? Why did they matter? Instead of, the kind of armchair history or academic history, which is history from the top down, sometimes people want to know about generally what were people doing in this area. And I think that really relates to people more sometimes than, what was Commissioner so-and-so doing in 1922? It's like, maybe for a fourth grader, they don't care. So we're finding different avenues of connecting people with our rich history here, and it's been a lot of fun so far, and I've made a lot of new friends. One thing I didn't have on my slide here, but I'm really excited about is this particular exhibit is being developed at the same time that we are redeveloping our interpretive signs out in front of our historic houses on site. And thankfully, we have a wealth of young professional talent here in Pinellas County. So I'm working with Allison Hulabin to redesign those interpretive signs. And again, it is through donations that the community makes to Heritage Village that we're able to work with Allison and pay her a living wage, which is also important in the history field. So we're really excited to be working with Allison. And thank you, Terry, for introducing us. Yeah, I think it was you. So to kind of sum up all of this, this moment is a once in a generation opportunity to renew public engagement with history. It's a crucial time to get people thinking about what does it mean to be 250? What does it mean to be American? What does it mean to be someone from Pinellas County? How do we have things in common? How do we relate? Maybe that trajectory and that trend will catch up with us rather than what divides us, which I think history is certainly a great way to find what we have in common rather than not. So I want to start, and this is my call to action, the semi-quincentennial fever. I hope everyone's on board. Locally, to recommit ourselves, to advocate for, and to connect. We're already doing it, right? In this room, we're already doing these things. But I think, it's easy to say that when you're at a conference and you're all in the same room, and then it's hard when you all go back to your respective places. And it's like, oh, what did they say at that conference last week? And then you get busy. But truly and earnestly, I want us to all think about how we can contribute to the Heritage Village 50th anniversary moving forward, because I'm certainly willing to have conversations with people that have been around in this community longer than I have and know the history better than I do about what that 50th anniversary should look like. And my card is up at the Heritage Village table, so please feel free to grab it and reach out to me. But even more than that, what are we going to do here in Pinellas County to celebrate the America's 250th anniversary? So we need help, right? We all need help. And I was thinking about what graphic I wanted here. And of course, the Beatles song started playing. So I'm like, oh, clearly that has to be it. We all need to help one another to come to a point where this will be successful. And we're kind of running out of time because it's less than 2 years away. We unfortunately, if you go to the ASLH website, so the American Association of State and Local History website, what you'll find is that all 50 states have a 250 commission for the birthday of the United States, including some American territories. There is one state that is absent currently. Guess which one it is? It's us. And interestingly enough, the Congressional America 250 caucus included Representative Maria Elvira Salazar, hopefully I'm saying that right, but she was the caucus co-chair. I don't know. So another call to action is call Maria. Ask her what's going on. Why do we not have a 250 commission for the state of Florida? We are woefully behind. There are certain states I've looked at that have been doing this already. They've already had a commission established 5 years ago. So I've talked with certain other historically minded people in the area, and some of them are aware that this needs to happen. And again, if you're interested in leading the charge with me, and I know Tom's really interested in figuring out how do we get this going, grab my card, and with critical mass can get a lot of things done. So Thank you, everybody. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those. And I'll be sticking around, so you don't have to ask them now. You can ask them later.
But if you do, I want to take a couple of minutes. If you do have a question, microphone. You're supposed to be waiting. There was a gentleman right here.
Hi, thank you very much for your presentation. I was just wondering, there are other organizations in the United States and abroad, like Henry Ford's Greenfield Village, or don't know if you know about the Meiji-Mura Museum in Japan. It's very interesting. You might want to set up something with them. It's same thing, buildings from all around Japan, which were under threat, that were brought there from the Meiji-Mura time period, which is basically 19th century. So I was just wondering if you are involved in talking with them, similar programs, exchanges, et cetera, with similar institutions.
You know, I'm not at this point, but I think, and thank you for your question. I think that's a really fantastic idea that I reach out, and because I'm work smarter, not harder. If there's a template, I'm happy. If it's a good template, that I should preface that. I'm happy to work with others to do really good programming, and I'm not the smartest person in the room. My ego is low enough that I can say that, and I love working with groups of people. So if there's any way that I can make things easier for myself while providing amazing opportunities for visitors from everywhere to Pinellas County and to Heritage Village, I'm totally game to do that.
Curious, what are the other two buildings? You mentioned 3, the House of Seven Gables. I'm just curious about the other 2.
Yeah, so the other 2 that we've started this journey with are our Greenwood House, and then also one of our more popular buildings on site is the H.C. Smith store, which is a sundries shop. People love it. You can go in there and get like an old-timey Coca-Cola or a Sprite, and they have got all these wonderful vintage cars that you can explore. And the building's history is really fascinating in and of itself. It was originally from downtown St. Pete, generally in the area of where the Johns Hopkins Children's Hospital is today. And it's a fantastic building, but the closer, so you have to stop doing this to myself, the closer you look at it, the more you're like, oh my goodness, we really need to work on this building. So we had gone through a prioritization process and looking at with the Ranker architect that we use. His name is Paul Palmer. He's wonderful if you get a chance to work with him, to kind of understand better, like, which houses need this immediately. And so of course I'm coming from the position where I'm like, all of them, they all need it immediately. To a point where it's like, well, here are your resources. And again, we're going back to that penny money, which with preservation projects, you can spend through pretty darn fast, pardon my language, but we need more penny money. So vote for the penny the next time the vote comes around. But yeah, we have those 3 buildings coming up. And then the next grouping is our Plant Sumner House, which was also a wonderful house with a lot of history. Used to be up on the property of the Bellevue Biltmore. And then I believe after that, Plant Sumner, our I think our Daniel McMullen House, and I'm blanking on the other one, but we have 3 more in the pipeline. Oh, and while I'm thinking of that, if anybody has the number for a really great log cabin restoration person, please let me know, because that is a totally different animal in and of itself, is log cabin restoration. So we're looking to figure out how we best preserve our 1852 McMullen Coachman log cabin. So that's the oldest extant building in Pinellas County, and we need to make sure that it sticks around. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. And just to follow that, the Florida Division of Historical Resources, those of you that may know Ruben Acosta, who used to be kind of the keeper of the National Register for the state of Florida, is now advanced and is in a higher position right now, did a presentation about, I think it was right after COVID. Heritage Village in Pinellas County is not the only effort that caught bicentennial fever at the time. Where I used to work in Volusia County, if you ever heard of the Barberville Pioneers Settlement, it's the same sort of thing around a little rural school. They moved some buildings that were threatened from around Volusia County, created a little history center there. Up in Zephyr Hills, there's another one. I think the state's documented about a dozen of these bicentennial little villages that kind of popped up at the time. And they are interested in terms of, here we are 50 years later, you have to be 50 years old to be eligible for listing on the National Register of Historic Places. So something from the bicentennial now, 50 years later, is eligible in itself for listing on the National Register of Historic Places. So that's something that's interesting as time progresses.